Thank you very much. It's great to be here in front of you again. This is one of my favorite conferences. A few years ago, I was here with a group of youth. It was great to be here, especially for my youth, you know, for them to feel the pride in the work they were doing and be able to present it to a great group like this. And then I came last year as a participant, and you know, I haven't stopped thinking about mob grazing. And I'm trying to figure out how to corral all my students like cows into a corner of the land and, you know, make them stay there for 8 hours and then move them somewhere else. And so I get a lot of great information here. This is a real great group. I'm really thankful to be here. And I'm thankful to everybody who made it possible for me to be here, starting with my mom. But in a more contemporary context, you know, I am starting this nonprofit, and I have a funder, the Kindle Project out of Santa Fe, that gives me latitude to be able to participate in things like this. So I'm really thankful for that. So those of you who've been, maybe you've been aware of the work I've done over the years. You know, I've always been known as a youth advocate and a mentor. It's a personal passion of mine, and it's because I have a large family. And you know, I've seen a lot of my cousins, a lot of my nephews fall down. And I've always wondered, you know, why are we falling down? Why are we falling victim to different kinds of violence, gangs, drug abuse, and these kinds of things? So, you know, I do these kinds of projects because of that reason. And over the years, I've gained some experience in the models of how to engage youth. And, you know, this is about young agrarians. So I think it's very appropriate that we talk about the different ways of engaging youth. We all know why we have to do that. There's all kinds of statistics about, you know, less than 1% of the population is growing food for the other 99%. Hey, that's like another 91%. You got to start thinking about that. You know, occupy the farm. We're aware of these, the average age of the farmers. You know, we know the need. And I've gone to a point where we know what the problem is, and now I'm really focused on answering the how. How do we engage the youth? So let me share some experience I have. In one context, I've been a school teacher. And, you know, and most of my students, like it was mentioned earlier, appreciate me as a school teacher. You know, I'm able to bring any science subject back to the subject of maíz. You know, my students think I'm really corny in that way. And, but I can, whether it's earth science, environmental science, biology, chemistry, I can always bring it back to the acequias, back to the land, back to food security, crops. And so it's really a great way to teach basically a land-based population that we have in northern New Mexico, even though we're separated from the land largely over the last few generations. So, you know, I call this casting a large net. You don't know who you're going to catch in your audience. You know, you can only hope that in the future that's going to pay off. I have a student here in town. Maybe some of you know him, Jose Luis Ortiz. He's now farming at La Placita, but he was my student in 1999. And he called me up 2 years ago asking me for seed and advice. So sometimes when you're investing in the young people, it might take 10 years for that seed to germinate and for you to realize that you made an impact. But indeed, you can cast a large net, and that's really what I prefer to do now. You know, other ways that I've worked is we created a Sembrando Semillas project with the New Mexico Acequia Association. I no longer coordinate that project, but it still exists. And the model we employed on that is these young people were already either directly or remotely connected to agricultural traditions, and we're just trying to nurture that along. So I call that casting a smaller net. You're investing more in a population that you think can help carry on agricultural traditions into the future because they're already doing it, but you can start to figure out how to instill more pride and really take them to get ownership and mentor them along. You know, and then there's what I do in my personal work, you know, with my family farm. And so I'm seated on I have 1 acre of my own land, but I'm sandwiched between my mom and my aunt who let me use their land. And so we call the entire farm, it's about 2 acres, Sol Feliz farm. And we have visitors from all over come visit us. The CU Boulder comes, the INVEST program, Colorado College, various charter schools, the NACA charter schools been out there. Bosque Charter School from down here, a whole bunch of groups either from out of state or here we have the local elementary, local charter schools come out to the farm, and actually through my nonprofit I pay the transportation on that because the schools can't really afford that. And so, you know, we've opened up our own property as a demonstration farm and an educational center, and it's really a focal point for a lot of the activities. So that's kind of how we've engaged the youth. In my recent project, I've co-founded this nonprofit called IRE, Agriculture, Implementation, Research, and Education, which does just that. And so now, again, with the idea of casting a large net, I'm mostly in chrysalis schools, but also in Peñasco Middle School. And what's really rewarding about that is working with these young people. Like here's Joseph, and Joseph was a hard kid. You know, he's I couldn't tell if I was getting to him or not. You know, by my first presentation, I was like, he was the kid in the corner, and you know, I wasn't sure if he was paying attention or even cared. By the second presentation, I got out my seed collection, and I was seeing he was interested in the seeds. And then by the third presentation, when I said we're going to go out to the farm and get the land going, I had this kid. He chased me out to my car. And the teachers were saying, hey, Joseph, come back. We're in class. He's all, wait, I got to tell this guy something. He's all, mister, I want to be a farmer. He said, just tell me what I got to do. And I said, well, give me your phone number. And so then I was able to work with Joseph all summer. So I also teach at UNM Taos, but the thing is when you teach at the college level, these are older people. They already know you. I'm just singing to the choir. I really feel the rewards of working with these young people who had no idea that agriculture was an option for them. And one thing I got to tell you is, and you know, and I hate to say this, but I believe it works, is I capitalize on their fear. And it's a drag that the youth have so much fear. It's not my fault that they have fear. But, you know, all this climate change stuff, all this 2012 stuff, all this apocalypse stuff, it's taking a toll on our youth. And a lot of them aren't going to talk to you about it. But a lot of them don't think there's going to be a 2013. And we really need to think about that. But at the same time, when I say, you know what, through permaculture, we talk about the problem is a solution. So we can either focus on the end of this world, or we can look at the beginning of the next world. So where do you want to be, you know, in January 2013? And then we start talking about the money that can be made on agriculture. When we're cleaning seeds with the kids and they're dropping seeds on the ground, I say, you better pick up each and every one of those seeds. I'm going to bring a tablespoon out here. And once you fill that tablespoon up, that's $4. What do you mean that's $4? We can sell that seed for $4. This is a local land-raised seed. This isn't a seed you're buying at a seed packet. This isn't starch you're getting at Walmart. This is a seed that's been in this community for 1,000 years or more. So this has value. This year I grew out 2 squashes, if you can believe this, but the seeds on these squashes were $5 each. They were worth more their weight in gold. And so that's what we're looking at in the future. And so the kids, the students, I either capitalize on their fear and give them an option, a road that gives them something that they can see and they can participate in, or, you know, I show them the money that, you know, we can sell chicos for 15, 20 bucks a pound, and people will buy that. And they will buy this garlic for $20 a pound, because not only is it the best, but it's from here, it's land raised, and not only that, you're young people, you're the youngest ones in the market if we get you there. So it's been pretty effective, you know, and then we show them in terms of, you know, being visionary. Like here we're doing some cobble mulching and trying to figure out ways to deal with drought, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So I'm just going to show you a little time lapse. You know, I took these kids on a ½ acre of land. I leased a ½ acre of land that was barren, you know, just weeds, because I wanted the kids to participate in this agricultural process from the beginning, taking an abandoned piece of land and then seeing it produce. You know, I could have them out at my farm, Sol Feliz, but that's already halfway done. You know, Sol Feliz is magical. You throw a seed, it grows, you know, 10 things, and you don't know where it came from, and it's all miraculous and beautiful. So, you know, I want kids to experience that, but I want them to be able to, I want to take them along in baby steps and us do this together. So we took on this field. You know, we brought 7 yards of compost out there. And, you know, and I'm a real meat and potatoes kind of guy. You know, I just want to, I'm trying to develop methods that are very straightforward and efficient. So I'm telling these kids how we're doing it with, you know, kind of a till, no-till type of system using an 8-horsepower tiller. This was Chrysalis High School in Vista Grande High School. I thought that was kind of cool how this time-lapse caught me in midair, look. I'm all levitating. So, you know, we got all this field going, and it was great, you know. So once we got it going, then we start irrigating, you know. So this is, you know, typical acequia irrigation, and this was in, our irrigation waters ran out the 3rd week in June. And us on the acequias, you know, that's just how it is. We know there's so much snow in the mountains, it melts, you have so much irrigation water, and everybody on the acequia knows that regardless of how many acre-feet you have at the state engineer's office, that, you know, if the water runs out the 1st week in June, the 3rd week in June, that's it. You're not going to squeeze any more moisture out of the rock. And I'm okay with that, because I'm looking at, like, you know, Lillian Hill was up here from Hopi, and I'm looking at these ancestral, you know, agricultural methods, and I know the crops can do it. You know, water is not the limiting factor in getting yield from the land. You know, corn and beans and garbanzos, lentils, all these crops are resilient. So, you know, don't fool yourself that the water crisis is going to equal a food crisis. That's only going to be because that we're all dependent on the conventional food system. If we went more to indigenous style of agriculture, you know, we can get the moisture to the crops or let the crops get their own moisture. So, you know, I was okay with running out of water to the 3rd week in June. But then something else happened that I didn't realize I'm going to talk about in a minute. So when the water ran out, then I started to realize the importance of the community. And somebody in here said, you know, that when the hard times happen, you know, it's going to be more important to know your neighbor, or, you know, I'm going to measure your sustainability more by the number of friends and neighbors you depend on rather than the number of kilowatts you're getting out of your solar panels, stuff like that. So I was always the guy saying that, you know, when the hard times come, we're all going to band together. Well, it could be said that this year was a microcosm of the hard times. You know, the water ran out the 3rd week in June, and as Mayordomo, you know, I was getting all kinds of phone calls, and, you know, I started to have to become a counselor and, you know, and tell people I'm sorry, you know, and there's no more water, and, you know, spending hours doing that. But I came to realize that this is a complex issue, and even though the acequias, you know, we have this idea of reparto or repartimiento, like early in the season, we divvy out the water based on how many acres you have. So a person with 10 acres can get the water 10 times as much as a person with 1 acre. The good news is there's so much water at that time. You know, as Mayordomo, we have 5 miles and 4 ditches, and I can run all 4 ditches full blast and have like 6 irrigators going at the same time in April. Well, that starts to diminish. By the time we got to June, it was 1 irrigator per day, and towards the end of the June, it was 1 irrigator gets 4 hours. And then there's just no more water. I was one of the last irrigators. That's the nice part about being a Mayordomo. And I had the water on my land for 48 hours until I was convinced that, no, I'm not going to get the water to the last plants on the row. It's just not going to happen. There's no more water. And all my crops were on their own.